Hi, Code Practice Channel. Haven't done one of these in a while, so we've actually got two today. I thought that this very big sum problem was going to be trickier than it actually was. So let me, I'll just show a solution really quickly so that we can see that it is in fact pretty easy. So the challenge here is to print the sum of the elements in the array, keeping in mind that some of those integers might be quite large. So in some languages, when you have an integer, a number that gets too big, you have to use a special type, and there's some conversion between different types of numbers. It turns out that in Python, that stuff is handled for us under the hood, and so if we overflow the normal integer, it'll do the conversion for us, and we don't have to really think about it. So we can just return some array, and that passes the test cases, all of them. If you haven't seen the sum function before, it's something that's available just like from Python. It's like a built-in function. It's the same as doing something like total equals 0, and for n in the array, total plus equal n, and return total. So this will work too. So either of these ways is good enough. Again, in some languages we'd have to do some kind of conversion here, which would make this tricky. But in Python, this is actually easy. I checked it in JavaScript too, and at least in the version of Node that's in Hackerrank, it's also like that number conversion is handled for us, and so you have to go to some other language to find a version of this that's actually very tricky. Cool. So let's move on to this other problem, which is trickier. So this is a time delta. When they're trying to compute the number of seconds ago that something was published, so how many hours, minutes, and seconds. And then the tricky thing is that these are in different time zones, and that can be confusing. So we were given two timestamps that a user can see. We get a day, and then so like the day of the week, the number of that day in the month, the year, hour, minute, seconds, and then the time zone. So we're supposed to print the absolute difference between two times that are in this format. So this is we're going to try and do this in Python, so we're going to try and compute this time delta between these two times. And the first thing that we've got to do, these are getting passed in. If we read this code, it's a little funny just because they're doing this fancy output path business to write to a file, but they get a time as or they get the number of times that they're going to input as an integer, and then they do like two times at a time. These come in as strings, and then they pass those strings into the time delta function that we're supposed to implement. So I'm going to import these two helpers, the time delta and date time, from the Python datetime library. This has got some basic tools for working with dates and times. So let's just start by trying to parse these as date times. Let's go datetime t1. Let's just go ahead and try it this way. Return datetime t1 minus datetime t2. And we'll find out whether that works. Okay, it doesn't look like this works. Type error, string object cannot be interpreted as an integer. So just to look here at the datetime type. This is a combination of a date and a time, so that's what we want. Year, month, day, hour, minute, second, and time zone info. So this has actually got all of the things that we want, but it sounds like when we try to create one of these, it requires passing in either all of these things, the year, month, day, hour, minute, second. The remaining arguments must be integers in the following ranges. So we can't just construct one of these without knowing like which part is the year, the month, the day, the hour, and the seconds. So that's going to be a little tricky. We've got to actually figure out how do we split this string up and pass each different piece in. So we could, we know that we're going to get, this is sort of the format. We could try to be very deliberate and say, okay, we know that this is going to be the day, this is going to be the day of the month, this is going to be the month, the year. We could try to be very clever and just sort of like split the string up ourselves and like try and do all of that parsing ourselves. But there's actually another method, if I can find it here in the docs, for parsing from a string. So this is a method it's quite difficult to pronounce. I don't I think some people will say stirp time, but I'm not sure that that's actually the right way to pronounce it. But you can sort of think of it as we're going to parse a string. So string parse as a time. It's not a particularly well named function, but we're going to parse a string into a time. And what this needs is it needs a format string. We can go and open up this other page in the docs to see a little bit more about these format strings. So there's a function called stirf time, which is sort of the opposite. It takes a time and prints it as a string, and we want to go the opposite direction. We want to take a string and turn it into a date time. So it's got this whole section about these format codes. So there's this way of saying, okay, this is what each of the different parts of the string means. So this is like day, month, year, DMY, and then hour, minute, second, and then some F. I guess it's something for the milliseconds. And then you can turn it into this other format for the day of the week, the day, I guess this is a short version of the month, the year, and then some other sort of directives here that tell it how to print out this 11:59 p.m. So these are all of these format codes, and so we could go through and we could sort of figure out, okay, what are all of the format codes that we need in order to parse this thing, and that makes it a little easier than trying to handle and like the string splitting for each of these different things. I'm going to go one step further. Instead of trying to interpret all of these format codes myself, I'm just going to go ahead and ask ChatGPT, how do I write the stirp time format string for a date time to parse a date time if the string input is like this. And let's see if ChatGPT can help us come up with this format string. Okay. You can use the stirp time method with a format string like this to parse a datetime string in the given format. Here's a code snippet demonstrating how to do this. So here's the date string, and then we can use stirp time with the date string and the format string to parse our date object. We could go ahead and check that each of these different directives match what's in the docs for each of these things, but I think even faster is probably just to try it. So I'm just going to copy this format string out and go into our back to our solution and say our format string is this, and then we're going to datetime, stirp time, both of these with the format string. So let's see what we get when we do this. Okay. Unsupported operand types for plus datetime, time delta, and string. Okay, so we've actually gotten pretty far here. So what this is telling us is that we've actually got something on this line when we're running this. This is to print out this to the file. We've got a file pointer, we're writing to the file, and we've gotten a delta back from our time delta function. So that means that our string parsing did an error and it did this subtraction because we've got a date time time delta. So when we just subtract these, the two date times that we parsed, it gives us a time delta object. And so we've actually done a lot of the core of this problem now. We've parsed these strings, we've subtracted them, and now we just need to turn this into the thing that this is supposed to be. So the sample output says these are supposed to be like the total number of seconds. So we have to take this time delta, we have to say, okay, this is our delta, and then we have to get the number of seconds and then return a string so that it can write it like this. So let's go ahead and take the delta. We're going to go the seconds equal delta. How do we get the seconds from here? Seconds. Class attributes, instance attributes, read only. Second, datetime.second. What about seconds? Seconds. Oh, we've got total seconds. That seems probably what we want. So let's go, that's the total seconds, and then we're going to return a string with the seconds. So let's try this and see what we get. Okay, so our output is wrong, but it's very close. So we've got floats here. We've got the like 0.0 on the end of this, and we don't want that. So before we turn it into a string, let's go ahead and turn it into an int, and then try again. And then let's go ahead and submit. It's passing the test cases. All right, so it's failing the other test cases, the hidden test cases. So it's supposed to do this, and it is not. So we're in a weird place because we don't actually know what is our code doing that's different from this, what it's sort of expected to do in these two test cases. We've got test case 1 and test case 2, and we're not sure exactly what is wrong. So there's a couple of different strategies here, because we know that our basic function seems like it's working. It's working with this test case 0. So the basic logic is right. And so the question is, like, what are the kinds of date times that we don't currently like compute correctly? What's going wrong with our function? And what I'm going to do to figure this out, I'm going to go ahead and just take this into the time delta.pi on my local machine, and just like copy and paste the solution that we have, and then try running it on the local machine with some sample inputs. So I've actually got this input.text, which has got these sample inputs here. And when we run Python time delta.py with input.text, we've got an error on line 33. Let's try checking this again. My head is in the way of the code here. Okay, it just looks like we've duplicated that line. Okay, let's try this again. And okay, so there's no output path here. Let's, instead of doing all of this writing to a function pointer, we're just going to print the output. And let's try this again. Okay. So just taking a look at this and comparing it to the output here in, like the expected output here, I think it's pretty clear to me what's going on. So these are all positive integers, and my output has a bunch of negative integers. So I think this is probably just not reading the full description close enough. Yeah, here it is. Print the absolute difference in seconds. So it's not just t1 minus t2, it's the absolute value of t1 minus t2. There's a handy function in Python called abs that takes the absolute value. So it just like takes any negative number and turns it to a positive, flips it or rotates it around 0. So let's try running this and just make sure we didn't break it. And then let's try the submit and see if it passes those hidden test cases. It does. Cool. So that one was pretty involved. We had to look up a bunch of stuff about Python date times. Got to use ChatGPT to help us generate this format string, and then had to do some tricky debugging on just like to figure out what was actually wrong with our code here. Helpful to read the instructions carefully, and helpful to have some tools for debugging. But then we built up our solution step by step. All right, I hope that was fun to see, and good luck on the next ones. There's a lot of Python challenges, so if you haven't gone through and tried solving these, there's a lot of fun ones. So you can learn a lot. Thanks. Tune in next time.